Hello, and welcome to the Up and Comer Show. This is a podcast all about learning how to live a good life. That's what we are trying to do each and every episode, and we believe that takes having intention in the tension. It's not just a catchy phrase, it also has some really important meaning because life is filled with tension that we get to live in the middle of, and it's a sweet dance, this life it is. Today is a sweet interview that I can't wait to get to, but of course, housekeeping first. So if you haven't yet, leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's super easy. Just scroll down on your phone if you're listening to it, or find us on iTunes. You can also find us on theupandcomershow.com. But if you can leave us a rating and review, that would be such a gift, such a blessing for us. It helps us get seen by more people so that more people can check out these encouraging and hopefully helpful episodes. The other way that you could support, if you feel like it, is sending some money our way through Patreon. So we're on Patreon. You can find all the info about that on theupandcomershow.com. Again, I would love your support to help pay the bills for this show. It is a passion project. And if you have some thoughts or some comments or some questions you'd like me and Adam to answer, send us an email, theupandcomershow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And last but not least, you should subscribe so you make sure you get every episode straight to your podcast player of choice. So just hit that subscribe button. That would also be super helpful. I think that's it for all of my announcements. So today, what we have is an interview with an amazing dude, and this dude's name is BC Cerna. BC Cerna. So who is BC? BC Cerna has spent the last 10 years traveling the world sharing stories of good and highlighting nonprofit organizations through film and social media. He's also worked closely with high school organizations teaching students how to become heart-led leaders in their communities. He spent 5 years as a Young Life leader in Denver, Colorado, and is currently launched a new podcast called the Pursuing Purpose podcast. So definitely check that out. It's worth a listen. He is a man focused on this topic and heart position of purpose. And there's a lot that we can learn from him. He spent the last 10 years, as he said, traveling. And in this interview, we get to dive into a lot of those experiences. So we talk about what those gave him and what traveling the world the last 10 years has produced in him personally. We talk about culture and those cultural experiences. We talk about the trade-offs and finding the balance in traveling and what's healthy and what's not healthy in traveling. We talk about the importance of community and relationships and authenticity and vulnerability. We talk about the importance of purpose and why purpose trumps passion, which is a really good point. You're going to want to check that out. We talk about film, videography, and storytelling, things that he's definitely mastered a lot of that craft in. And we get to touch on the lows in his life, things that are really hard that he's walked through, his personality traits and the Enneagram number and much more. So it's an interview worth listening. I had a blast. He's a dear friend of mine now and just a great dude. Lives here in California, in Los Angeles, SoCal. So he's in Venice. And you definitely going to want to follow along and see what the next few years holds, as he's got a lot of exciting things. And this is a conversation that I know you'll be blessed by. So I am going to keep it short and sweet this time. So without further ado, please enjoy. Oh yeah, before I get there, the last thing I forgot was that you can find all the show notes for this episode, all the links. I tidied it all up. I even put some quotes in there, and that's all at theupandcomershow.com/episodes/BC. All right, without further ado, please enjoy this interview with BC Cerna. BC Cerna, welcome to the Up and Comer Show.
Good to be here.
It's good to be here. We are in your recording studio, aka your room,
AKA a garage. Yeah.
It's really nice, guys. I mean, if you could see it, you'd be impressed too. I'm very impressed. And I'm just thankful God kind of connected our paths this last year. It's been fun to learn a little bit more about you and have another brother over here on the west side in Venice that I get to hang out with whenever I come over here. So I'm pretty stoked about today.
Yeah, man, me too. I know when Zach hit me up and was like, yo, you got to meet this guy. He's in the same exact vein as you. I was like 100%. And so, yeah, man, I'm really excited for friendship and I'm super inspired, I think. More. I mean, when you first came over and we met, I was just asking you a million questions about your book and your story because I was like, dang, this dude's killing it. He's way ahead of the curve.
Well, thank you. No, it's just fun. It's fun to be with like-minded brothers, people pursuing and trying to make a difference. And we're going to talk all about that today. So I'm excited to dive in. I want to start here. So one of the things I learned was this time when I think it was around Nashville that you ended up in your. There'll be context here that people have heard in the intro, but in your RV. You stopped beside the road at like a truck stop or something in Nashville and played Shirts for Skins football.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what happened.
Yeah, we lived in an RV for 3 months last year, and we're a bunch of 7 dudes just living in an RV. We needed to exercise every once in a while because we would just be traveling. We traveled 1,000 miles a week for like 8 weeks, and we would play football, and it would get intense and funny. And sometimes we'd be playing on concrete at midnight, just like football, and it was pretty funny. Yeah, it got a lot of testosterone out of the RV.
Nice. Well, that is actually really important with an RV full of guys.
Yeah.
Wow. The other thing I learned about you in doing some research is that that one, you love 90s rap, and 2, you love dancing to 90s rap.
Yeah.
Where are the origins of that?
Oh man, I don't know. I think obviously my dad, I got a lot of enjoyment from dancing. My dad was always the first one on the dance floor, super goofy.
No way.
Thought he was a good dancer.
Dude, I dream of that. My dad's the complete opposite.
Really? Weird, because I dream of the I used to dream of the opposite.
No way.
I mean, it was like embarrassing growing up, but then you realize, wow, my dad was a total badass. And and that's probably where I got some of that confidence from of the dance. But I love dancing. I've always danced, and I've been in school musicals and stuff, which is random. But
when did you start dancing? I mean, did you ever do dance as like a hobby or activity as a kid, or was it more just for fun?
It was mostly for fun. And then in high school, I got a job with Radio Disney, and I was dancing with Radio Disney. No one knows that.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I've never shared that with
How
anyone.
did that happen?
2 of my friends that were girls, they sang and danced for them, and then they were like, yeah, you should. I don't remember how it happened. I was 15. This was a long time ago, but I just showed up, and it was like a hype, kind of like you would go to Radio Disney events or Disney events or something like that, and like Cheetah Girls would come or J.C. McCartney would come, and we would like open for them and like perform. It was crazy, yeah.
How many years did you do that?
I did it for a couple years in high school, and that's where I started. And then senior year of high school, our theater teacher was retiring, and she wanted athletes to come out and be in the musical. And so me and my best friend were like really the only athletes that came out. I think maybe another one came out, but we came out and we're in the school musical, and we did dance there, and that was kind of the only thing I ever really experienced it, like, and I did one musical in college too, but I've never really got into it any other way.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you ever we gotta go sometime. I take some dance classes at Millennium, so you should come roll with.
That'd
it's
be
super fun. I kind of wish I had more in my background. That's kind of my guilty pleasure, but
yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, I dance every morning. If you ever watch my Instagram stories, I love music. I love rhythm. I love just present moment.
What song currently is the one that makes you want to dance the most or gets you most hype?
Oh, that's a good question. Dang, I don't know. This morning I was dancing to Bruno Mars, and that gets me really hyped. And I when I run, I'm just laughing the whole time, and I'm just dancing because that's how I get my energy to focus to run. But yeah, that's
epic.
Hype. Yeah,
I love that. Okay, so we're gonna get to we're gonna get to a lot of the topics here soon, but this is just too good. Well, you mentioned that you were an athlete, so you played basketball, correct?
Yeah.
Well, what was that like, or because you went to college to play basketball, correct?
Yeah.
So what was it about? Did you play other sports growing up? Was it mainly just basketball? And what about it did you like, or what kind of gave you life from that?
I don't know what. I think I grew up a little bit in Sacramento, California, and we had the Sacramento Kings at that time, Jason Williams, and that was kind of like my
that was a heyday. Yeah,
dude. I don't know why that one stuck. I guess because I was a little bit scared of football when I was younger, and so basketball was a little bit more. I just always found freedom in it and fun in it, and and then obviously started getting a little bit taller in high school, but yeah, I've always loved. It was just a flow, definitely like where you just found your niche of like this feels good.
And then did you get a scholarship for college, or did you?
No. I just walked on at like a D3 JUCO school. I wanted to leave Denver. I grew up in Denver, and I knew I wanted to leave. And my dad was spending a lot of time in Dallas for his work. I looked at some small schools, and I was like, might as well just go try. And so I went, and just walked on and was training with the team a lot. So
that's cool. Yeah, that seems like I love that. I love people that love a sport and are willing to just go and try to work their way up the ranks, regardless of if it works out or not, just because for the love of the game, right?
yeah. I loved it a little too much to where I never really cared about winning or losing, which was probably weird. But
that is.
I would play and I would never look at the score, and I just kind of was always playing, and I just it was funny. It was
wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I cannot relate at all with that.
Yeah, people get pretty. I mean, sometimes I play a lot down in Venice. And I'm playing for cardio nowadays because I got to be careful. I'm older, and I'm just running up and down playing cardio. But I just don't care about winning or losing. So some guys freak out and a lot of testosterone. And I'm just always like, yo, if I'm sweating at the end of the game, I feel happy. But
man, I need to learn some things from you because that's the thing that keeps. I love basketball, but the thing that keeps me from playing is just hating losing. Literally, it's so bad. Did you I'm interested. Were you ever competitive, or has that never been a drive for you, or never been a motivation for you?
Yeah, it's definitely never been a motivational drive for some reason. I don't know where that came from, but it just...
Are your parents the same way?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
For sure. They never instilled like that, come on, son, yelling at me or really digging into me. So I just I've just always been goofy anyway. Even in football, when I played in high school, I would... show up with hot pink shorts. Me and my best friend would mess around. We would jump on the pile of tackled people after it was already tackled, and we messed around a lot. We just never really cared. People get mad at us, but we were just like, this is a game.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, I think we need more of that in America, especially with the nature of how parents, get kids into a roadmap to professional whatever. It's man, we're missing the point. But so I think that highlights an interesting point, because one of the things that a lot of people that I talked to said, just a very common theme, is that your superpower and who you are. I had one guy said he's a big kid, a big child. One said that your superpower is play, and one said that being childlike is your gift. Playful, creative, and bold, weird, out there.
Yeah.
Is that how much of that is intentional versus just natural?
Oh, I would say it's 100% just natural. It's very I just grew up kind of squirrely out of it, never really fit in anywhere, and just kind of always enjoyed playing and running really fast. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram.
Nice.
So naturally, I think I've always kind of just been like that, and it's weird to think that it's just I've turned 30 last year, and I'm most students I work with, or just people in general, be like, oh, I thought you were 24 or 25, and I'd be like, that's cool, that's good to know. But yeah, it keeps me young, and obviously being a Young Life leader keeps you really young, because Young Life leaders are crazy, because Young Life's crazy. But yeah, I've just been a big kid and childlike for sure.
Talk to me about the downsides of being childlike, because I'm like the opposite. And the thing, again, this is fun about this, because I need to preach to myself to be more playful and childlike, and I love those qualities. And I love the quote, always striving to be childlike, not childish.
Totally. Yeah.
And so talk to me from your experience, what do you have to, where's the balance for you?
Well, it's very similar. So I see you and your success, and being younger than me, and having a book and this podcast and speaking. We're in the same vein, and I'm inspired. And I know that structure is an Enneagram 7 weakness, and also a childlike weakness is structure, kind of stability and roots, things that we as 7s we crave for those. And as like wanderers and nomadic, we crave for it's strong. It takes courage and strength to be still and be like just like stagnant. And so, you know, as much as we love to like adventure and play and have like this, you know, careless kind of attitude, we idolize or we look up to people who don't have that and have more structure. And just like anything in life, right? Like I think people with structure, they go, man, I wish I could just like not care and, you know, go travel to Japan next week or live out of my car or whatever it is. But I could never, people, you know, and it obviously comes down to how we were raised, to their biology or whatever it is. But, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm in a season now where I'm trying to transition that. And, yeah, I think God pulls us away from our numbers in cool ways. Like we're all like, you know, we might be an Enneagram, whatever, or a character personality test. But God's like, hey, I can make you, you know, stretch out in different ways you can ever imagine, where you're not even a number. He's like, I don't even care about what number you think you are, you know?
Yeah, no, it's like we like to try and box everything in, including God, like we were talking about beforehand.
Yeah.
And he's always like, don't do it. Like, stop trying to box everything in, you guys.
Yeah.
But we're so hard-headed, we just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And they are helpful. Like, they are helpful tools to help us understand ourselves, but they shouldn't be prescriptive or limiting in that sense, right? In this season, what is, I guess, how do you think about making that shift for you personally? And what have you found to be helpful and not helpful in kind of shifting towards the more structure?
I think identity, you know, we struggle with identity in our culture right now. Like I said, everyone's trying to box us, you know, everyone's trying to figure out, because when we box people, we feel more comfortable. We understand you know, who they are. And so my identity was attached to maybe traveling or being interesting or being, you know, unique because I'm traveling, you know, the next place I'm going or whatever it was. That was my identity. And we crave for that security and identity, but we also, it just numbs us. And so I had this really cool identity and success, like check that box, like, holy crap, I'm the traveler. Like I travel the world and it's for, you know, 10 years, it's been amazing. And then you kind of reflect and look in the mirror and you're like, why don't I want that identity? What identity do I want? And I want to be, what characteristics do I look to when I see people and go, wow, I want that. I want peace with like being still. I want freedom in who I am, no matter if I'm a car salesman or if I'm a janitor or if I travel the world. I want that kind of God confidence that, you know, I've seen people that are, you know, janitors and car salesmen or waiters, and none of those, you know, professions are wrong, but that would scare the hell out of me. I'd be like, what if I was a car salesman or if I sold mattresses? I would be so basic. But they have freedom in who they are because their identity isn't attached to what they do for work. And so even though what my identity was cool, I wanted to be different. I wanted my identity to be, I guess I don't really want an identity, but I want my identity to be love and like patience and like just joy, you know, abundance. So
yeah, and in that, like, how does being more playful and childlike and being more of a nomad and traveling, how does that hurt those things for you?
Well, you know, as an Enneagram 7, we run away from a lot of emotions or problems. So I kind of like felt, and a lot of travelers go through this, but even me personally, I was running kind of sometimes, running from adulthood, running from responsibilities, running from ourselves a lot of the time, you know, like as a young life leader, that was my everything for 5 years. But you know, I was afraid to be boxed and I was afraid to settle down because of maybe the fear of it, and running, it's just not sustainable. It's not healthy. You know, I could easily spend the next 10 years traveling the world doing videos for nonprofits and helping a lot of people, which is very like noble and nice and like good. I mean, I'm helping people and changing the world in some way, but we need to be okay with stillness and we need to be confident in it. And so I've just learned a lot about humbleness, ego, that whole idea, like that whole relationship with ego of like, you know, how much of my identity was wrapped in my ego and if I have this ego, that means I probably don't have too much confidence in God because I don't have confidence in who I am. And so, yeah, it's definitely dangerous. It's very beautiful and cool and exciting to be able to travel and running and stuff like that and be able to have that Peter Pan spirit, but it's also very dangerous.
Yeah, no, it's like that novelty piece, right? And novelty is like a drug a lot of times.
Yeah.
And the more we take hits, the more we need of it to keep taking hits. And Yeah, I actually work with a guy who's wired very similarly, and that's something we commonly talk about. And it's interesting. I think you made a good point though, that it's not sustainable, and that's what I think is so helpful for any up and comer, anyone in our position in life, is we're moving from development and growth and experience and all those things that it means as you grow up in life and learn about life and experiences and all of that. And you move into a season of more, less development and more producing, like actually giving tangible things to the world and creating more for others and less for yourself. And there has to be sustainability, right? Like God wants us to have He doesn't call us to, like, that's why do we need sleep every night? Sustainability. It's like, He wants us to understand, that like we don't need to play God. We don't need to try and be Superman, because we aren't. And so embrace the limitations and structure that He's placed on us and lean into that in a sustainable way that allows us to actually better fulfill for ourselves and for others. But it's so hard. Sustainability is a great piece in that. And I think the other thing you said that was really interesting is running from something. And I think that's like, I can imagine, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because this is my perspective, but I can imagine that it's a small shift, but it can be a massive shift when you go instead from running from something to running to something, right? Mm-hmm. Because running to something is like on purpose, kind of like a lot of what you're talking about now with your show, and we'll get to that soon, which will be sweet. But and running from is more fear-based, right?
Yeah.
One's more purpose-based, one more fear-based. What are your thoughts on like the difference between running from something versus running to something?
Yeah, totally. I think they each have their story to them. Running to something, I would say vision, right? So like even in Psalms, when it says men without vision will perish, like I love that idea of like, for me, I spent 10 years traveling since I was 19. I'm 30 now. And I always had vision of kind of who I wanted to become. I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going, but I knew I wanted to like, create and travel, and I like made that happen somehow. When it comes to that, that's beautiful. Like I'm running to something. I'm running towards this vision where I want to like make a difference in the world maybe, or help, high school kids with their walks and their stories. Running from something is like, I guess, a different side of the coin, where it is when we're still and we're sober, like not sober from alcohol or drugs, but when we're sober, like in our spirit and our soul, because even social media makes us drunk, buying stuff makes us drunk. I'm just saying like sober. I talk about like, on my mission and message a lot is having a sober soul. And so when your soul is sober and you're sitting still and your phone is off and you're in a room by yourself, what is coming up? What voice are you hearing? And is it shame? A lot of us will experience shame. So we'll hear the voice of doubt, shame, judgment in ourselves. We'll be like, dude, you're not good enough. You only got one college degree. You could have got 2 college degrees, or you've only been to 10 countries. You could be in 20, or shame, whatever it is. Like when we're sober and we're still, there's a lot of voices that come up. And so, I think that's running from something, because we can, the same way we numb our stillness with social media and shopping and Netflix, we can do it with traveling, and it's even a little bit more stimulating. And yeah, there's a little more beauty to it. Obviously, you'd rather go to Thailand than watch a whole Netflix series. But you always got to see your intention, right? Like what's your intention of it? And, I know a lot of people traveling and they look like they're having their dream life, but I mean, they're really running from like their fears or their traumas or themselves,
Yeah, dude, that's such a good word. I just want to highlight all of that. It's so good. And I think I love the sober in spirit and sober in soul. Man, what a great way to think about it. And that is the most holistic way to think about sobriety. And man, we love putting, again, that in a box. It's saying this is what sober is. It's referring to alcohol. No, this is a much bigger thing. Yeah. It's a spiritual, it's a soul thing. And I mean, that even goes to what God calls us to is not ever running. He calls us to walk by faith. It's like persistent plodding in a direction with endurance that's sustainable, because like he calls us to faithfulness in that, and it's not nearly as sexy or glamorous as a sprint, as a 100-meter dash. Like those guys, like think of Usain Bolt. I mean, this guy is like a superstar. But what about those marathon runners? No one knows their name. No one cares.
Yeah.
And that's life, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, the parallels. But you hit on intention, and that's really the mantra of the show, having intention in the tension. And if we, like, literally intention is the thing that can redeem everything that we do in a lot of ways. I'm curious, so, and you just hit also on some of the downsides with traveling. So I want to talk about traveling. You spent 10 plus years at this point, with traveling the world, starting from never traveling and then going to traveling the world for 10 years.
Yeah.
You started out with this organization called Up With The People. So I guess talk to me about those first experiences and what was that bubble popping experience, like you described it as?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, I grew up lower middle class, never had any financial stability or security in my family, but my family's amazing. But so I was paying for college out of my own pocket and kind of going into debt a little bit. Then got a scholarship to do a study abroad program. And the story of how that happens is really funny, of just like me seeing a guy with a table at my college. And he just looked alone. He literally just kind of looked like he was by himself. And I was like, oh, that guy looks alone. I might as well go talk to him. And that was literally the thought process. I went up and I just introduced myself. And just started talking to him, just to entertain him, really, because maybe also myself because I was bored. But he started talking about this program. Literally, it was going in one ear, out the other, because I know these programs cost money. I've heard all of them, and so he was talking, and then he was like, "Do you want to do an interview for it?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm good, man." And he's like, and then I thought in my head, I was like, I have a job interview in a week at at the mall down the street for college, side job at Nike. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll practice for my job interview in my head. So I was like, okay, cool, let's do it tomorrow. And so I do an interview, and he tells me about this whole program. You travel the world, you stay with host families, you do volunteer work, all this stuff. Literally not listening to really much any of it. I was interviewing him more than he was interviewing me. I was like, I just love asking questions. I love talking to people. So, and I had friends coming up during it. I wasn't really it was just more low key. And then he started talking about stuff, and then he was like, well, would you want to travel in this next program? And I was like, the one that's in like a month or a couple weeks? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I mean, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, there's scholarships available, and we have a performing arts piece that we have in our program, and we need male leaders that are kind of dancers also, and good community leaders. And he's like, we can give you a scholarship maybe. And I applied for a scholarship and got a full ride. And wasn't even that excited, because I just don't get excited about things in general. But I called my mom and I was like, hey mom, I think I'm going to do this program next semester where I travel the world for 6 months. I don't really know. And she's like, okay. My mom, my parents are just like, they're not financially really helping me, and so they're just always been encouraging. So they're like, okay, cool. So I do. I mean, my mom does meet with one of the guys. My mom met and had dinner with one of the guys who works there. And so I ended up doing that program and traveled the world for 6 months, just a couple countries, not that many. But the group that I traveled with, they were from 27 different countries. So it was 100 young adults from 27 countries. So it was a crazy diverse group of people I traveled with, and made friends all around the world. And that for sure opened up. I was still really naive, young American bro, 19-year-old kid, but it started definitely planting seeds of holy crap, there's a big world out there. And there's more than just finding checking your box at college. I want to do business, marketing, psychology, whatever it is. There's a bigger world out there. So, and then I just got crazy fortunate to get a job with them, an internship actually. And so I traveled for 6 months, and then I got an internship, and I started traveling with them, setting up the tours. And I guess that was kind of it.
How many? Well, do you have a total now? How many countries you've been to?
I don't. It's probably over 60.
Wow.
I don't really believe in counting. I never want to encourage counting, because people fight to count countries because they make them seem more interesting.
It's a game again.
Yeah, it's chasing something. And it's actually chasing something to where you don't even get to enjoy the country you're in or why you're going there. And obviously social media is a big, you go there to get the picture, and then you've been to France because you got a picture from Eiffel Tower. So I never really encouraged counting. And I always tell people I would rather have dinner with someone that lived in one country for 1 month than went to 4 countries in 1 month. And if someone lived in Japan for a month, I can ask them a million questions about Japan. But if they went to Japan, Thailand, Philippines, and Taiwan, then they barely experienced anything there. Yeah. They might have seen stuff, but they barely experienced culture.
What do you see from your experiences? What do you see as the amount of time to really gain a cultural experience? Because it's not a few days, and it's likely not even a week. What is that length of time?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, it depends. It comes down for me as relationships.
Yeah.
If you went to the Philippines and you saw some touristy stuff, that's cool. But then a week or a month later, you see a typhoon happen in the Philippines, and you don't have any memories of people there, or like you don't have a heart, you don't have a compassion, like you're not like, you're not like
attached.
You're not attached, right? And so you're just like, oh, I was just there. We could go crazy. And instead of like, oh my God, like my friend, so and so could, and I feel like that relationships is really what makes you part of somewhere you went to, and not just taking. We take as Americans. As like our human biology, we take a lot, but how do we go to give? And I'm not saying you have to like build a school or an orphanage or a water well, but how do you just give love and be a good ambassador for our country or wherever you're from,
Yeah.
So I don't know the exact time. I mean, I guess if you're thinking about, trying different foods, and I think it's just about relationships. Yeah. And to build a really good relationship, you need a couple weeks to where, it's like, there's humor in it.
Yeah.
There's adventure in it.
There's like locals. Almost, it seems like at the threshold of like more than one shared experience with people that develops a common bond or camaraderie or some manner of relationship with value, right?
Totally.
And it definitely seems like it could be like a 2-week amount that really kind of create. I mean, I was in Bangkok, Thailand for an Asian Tour qualifier that I had to withdraw from in the first couple of days. So I had basically 2 weeks there by myself. And what was interesting was by the second week, I really needed community. And there was a church there that I reached out to and got to go and like worship and hang out with them like twice. It's like this sweet connection.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because I needed people. Like you have a need for other humans and you're in a city full of humans. And it forces you to see other people as humans and not all these stereotypes and things. It's crazy.
Yeah. Relationships for sure is key. When traveling.
So I want to talk about, I guess, if you had, like, when you hear this question, what comes to mind first would be, or what comes to mind first is a question, but what was the most powerful cultural experience you've had?
Powerful cultural experience I had. There's a lot. I would say a moment for me was right when I started. I was 19 years old, went to the Philippines, was terrified just because I still was like, my biggest fear growing up was food. I wasn't that good at I was kind of picky eater. And when I was traveling, I was like, oh crap, like food's going to be like hard one to like say no to. So I was scared to go to the Philippines. Ended up obviously being, pretty good basic food, really good adobo and tocino and a lot of good foods if there's any Filipinos listening. And my host family lived in the slums, this area in the slums, and my host mom gave me her bed and lived with the 4 siblings. There was 4 kids in one bedroom, in one bed, and then I got her bed, I guess, and it was kind of broken and shabby, and there was bed bugs my first couple nights. But I remember like talking to her, and I was like, why'd you host me? This and this. She's like, oh, I knew that my kids would never travel the world, so I wanted a piece of the world to like come into my home. And so it was just like, very profound to me of like, I'm like the luckiest of the luckiest human. Like if you have a passport and you've been to one other country, you're literally 0.1% of the entire world.
Yeah.
When you really think about it. So at that point I was like, dang, like I need to own my cards I've been dealt. The greatest lottery you can win in some sense is being born American.
Totally.
But being born a white male American,
goodness.
it's like one of the greatest lotteries you can win.
Yeah.
So I guess at that point I was definitely like, dang, like I need to, I don't know. And then I met with so when I was traveling, I would meet with nonprofits and organize volunteer stuff. And I just kept hearing about amazing stories and people's hearts. And that's kind of what got me into video and storytelling. So.
If you had to talk about other like really impactful times, what would you say are kind of those pillars along the way of those 10 years that really made a difference in who you are today and really impacted you, that's going to carry forward probably your whole life? I mean, all of it will have an impact, but what would be some of the highlights?
There's of traveling or
of those experiences just in general over those years.
Oh man. Well, I mean, my one message that I can, holds to my testimony of like, I've built schools, orphanages, wells, hospitals all around the world, done a lot of humanitarian philanthropy stuff. But I always come back to locally is more important than anything. And then also mentoring. And I mean, being a Young Life leader for 5 years, more breakthrough and like self-reflection and God and everything happened in mentoring these kids, because it's the most humbling, illogical kind of like outlook on love that we can experience away from being a parent. Being a parent, when you become a parent, it's the greatest gift of all time, and it's the moment we understand God and like the universe and everything. We're like, oh my God, I helped create a freaking thing that's gonna have its own soul and think and breathe. So that moment is unlike anything else. The closest thing I can think of getting to that would be a mentor, because not that it's our child, but it's the closest I think we can get to that experience of, taking someone under your wing, or just being not even like we're helping them, but we're just in their corner and we're meeting them where they're at. And it's very humbling. You're not like Young Life's motto is you have to earn your right to be heard. And I love that, to where it's like in a culture where we want to talk a lot more than we want to listen. We want to teach a lot more than we want to learn. I think it's beautiful when you become a mentor. It's very humbling and very teach you a lot about grace and patience and just being real and human. Because these kids can spot BS right away of like, dude, just be real with me. Like, you're not trying to like just be real, you know. So yeah, I would say that's
amazing. Yeah, I remember hearing in some research I did about that transition. So you were, I believe it was 3 years into the time with Up the People and your internship and the job you had with them, and you heard from God that it was time to go back home and have local ministry. Talk to me about...
How'd you know that?
Research. You said it before.
Dope.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you talk to me about that moment and how like coming to terms with that, because that was not what you wanted.
Yeah.
It was the last thing you wanted. But talk to me about that inner dialogue and how kind of God brought you through that to going back to Denver.
Yeah, so I'm 23 years old at the time, and I've traveled the world for like 3.5 years at my absolute dream job. It was the coolest job in the entire... I literally would travel and organize volunteer trips for these college students, and then I would live with host families and find host families. Yeah. And it came to a point where I could do it the rest of my life, and for me, being like a 7, of just wanted to challenge myself more and keep moving, I was praying, and I was like, all right, God, what's the biggest need in the world, and how can I go do that? I want to go do the biggest need in the world, because I just want to like figure that out. And I thought to myself, is it water? Do I need to go to Africa and help deliver water to places? And I was like, is it orphans? Do I need to go to Asia and help with orphanages in like Thailand, Cambodia, whatever it is? And I was trying to figure this out. I'm very I love just algorithms of how I solve things in my head. I'm very visual. I'm very clean and simple too. I love simplicity of everything. So I'm asking God all these questions and journaling and praying. And I feel like God's like, go back to the US and work with youth. And I was like, that seems like the least coolest, exciting thing. That seems like the very last decision I would make. And God was like, no, because think about how you were when you were in high school and before you started traveling. He's like, think about, you've taken college students around the world for 3 years. He's like, these college students are already like burnt out and lost and confused. He's like, go work with them before they get there. He's like, go take high school kids around the world. Go work with high school kids on an intimate level. Go be the person you wish you had when you were in high school. Because when you make realizations in life, whatever age you are, you get upset that you didn't realize this before, right? You kind of get mad. You're like me. I remember being 20 something, my younger 20s. And I'm like, dang, like, why didn't I know I could change the world when I was 17? Why didn't I know I can volunteer locally? Why didn't I know I could be compassionate? And so I love the idea of you never fully learn something until you have to teach it. And so anyway, I moved back home to the US and just trusted God and had a lot of faith going into it and just started working with youth. And what was the question? How did I
processing that? The decision-making process.
Yeah. So for me, that was a decision. So I moved back home and I, thought about going back to college, thought about starting a nonprofit, thought about starting this one online thing that was what I'm really passionate about at the time. But more than anything, I was just working with youth. But yeah, it was hard. It was confusing, and it was a lot of patience, a lot of just trust and faith. And I always say like the opposite of faith is sight. So I just had a lot of faith, and obviously I'm a childlike spirit of 7. So I kind of was just like, it didn't matter where God put me. I just knew I could make the best out of it. So I was like, all right, God, well, I'm back in Denver in my parents' basement. How do I make the best out of this? I'm just an optimist, thank God. And I made the best out of it. I was doing free videos for nonprofits and looking for programs to mentor high school kids. And was started doing Young Life originally from my own high school in Arvada in Colorado, and then ended up working with inner city kids, moving to East Side, inner city, Denver. But yeah, it's definitely a hard process. But yeah, man, it's been crazy.
And I think it's so important, right, to understand that it's usually not going to make perfect sense because that's what faith means. And usually it's going to require some manner of humbling and eliminating us and like our preeminence. And then it's also going to be growing and stretching. It's going to be hard, right? And those are things not to avoid, but to embrace. It's so hard to just actively embrace that, but that's so much of what in life God calls us to, I feel like. And it's a cool example of it. But looking back now with the perspective you have now, like what has God been, like what through those times, what were the really refinement that was happening and teaching you and preparing you for?
I think leadership for sure, preparing me to own my story and own my voice. I think I have like a strong voice, but I've always just been very, timid in some level. And yeah, it taught me a lot about servant leadership, love leadership. For me, leadership's always been about dominance and being loud and being, like the smartest person and the one that kind of controls the energy in the room. And just through encountering a lot of them people I look up to that weren't those things, but I would consider them leaders. Yeah. I was like, dang, that's leadership. Like love and servantship and humbleness is leadership and vulnerability is leadership. And that was just so opposite to me that I had to learn those things and practice them. And being a mentor did that, and being, I think that's.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I want to, before we leave too much on the traveling side, I want to talk about, because I think the thing that's interesting about traveling, we actually had another guy on here a while back named Ethan Renault, and he is very similar, kindred spirit in the traveling side, and is always kind of on the go and very much kind of like a nomad in a lot of ways. So talk to me about the trade-offs and the downsides. Like, how does traveling hurt us, I guess is the question, which is a weird question. It adds a lot, right? We know that it's valuable, it adds experiences, and it helps shape us and form our worldview, and it's a blessing. But how does it hurt us?
I don't know if hurt's the best word, but how it maybe...
What are the dangers?
Enables. It definitely... So we thrive in community. We thrive with roots, and we thrive with people. And traveling is just a very lonely, isolating game, and it is hard to build relationships that mean something, that go deep when you're just on the move constantly, and you're 3, 4, or 5 months away at a time. It's really hard to go deep with people and walk through people. You could be traveling for 3 months, and when, someone that you consider your great friend, they lose their mom or their brother, or they're going through addiction or whatever it is, and you just can't be there for them. And so you miss that season of their life. And so, I think traveling is incredible and beautiful. And it's so great because at the end of the day, we're always working on ourselves no matter what. And we want to be the best versions of ourselves. But where it gets dangerous on the flip side is definitely community is really important. And, I think people crave it.
And after 10 years in transitioning to a newer season of life, a different, more localized season, how have you bridged that gap or overcome that lack of community to create community? Because there's going to be tension there in that transition, and I'm curious to hear how you work through that or where that tension's been for you.
I think just, relationships. I think going through life struggles with vulnerability and friends and community, everything just gets better, and you feel more confident and you feel more at peace, because we're all trying to earn love. We're all trying to be loved, and we're all trying to be interesting. And we think if we're more valuable, we're going to be loved by more people. And so traveling makes us valuable because we're interesting, and doing things makes us valuable because we're, whatever we're doing. But at the end of the day, love and like are very different, and it is much better to be loved deeply by few than liked widely by many. And we thrive on this idea of being liked by many will make us feel seen, but being loved deeply makes us feel like heard, and also being deeply, like not only being deeply loved, but loving people deeply.
Yeah. So there's definitely a misconception or wrong way of thinking that shapes a lot of this. But what else do you think keeps people from pouring into community or diving into those deep relationships? What stands in the way a lot of times, in your opinion?
I mean, ourselves, we are terrified to be fully seen and fully known, because we do not, we live in a culture that is very masked.
Yeah.
And we do not know if we'd be accepted. And so if people know, my struggles, my fears, my addictions, my insecurities or my shame, my past, then I'm not valuable. And we're supposed to remain pretty and sexy and exciting, so we have value. And that's where we're like right now. We're just trying to flip that culture on its head and do opposite, right? To where we're not impressed. We're not really impressed with how many countries you've been to, how much money you have, because we know a lot of people who have fame and a lot of money and a lot of success and a lot of accolades that we long for most days, but are committing suicide at a rapid rate. Celebrities that have everything literally are taking their lives and going to rehab. And so I think we're slowly starting to see that formula is not fulfilling that fruit. And so it's a slow process, but yeah, I think everyone's the biology of us, we crave to be fully seen, because at the end of the day, we love our parents so much is because we could literally call them and they're going to love us no matter what. If we killed someone on accident, if we work at McDonald's, if we, aren't that interesting or cool, our parents are just going to love us. If they're really good parents, they'll love you. Of course, they might push you. But at the end of the day, parents love you unconditionally, and we long to be loved unconditionally. And when we lose our parents, we get really scared if we're not married yet, because we're like, can anyone really love me unconditionally? Because I'm like a mess up and I'm like nerdy or goofy or, I don't fit in. And I used to be so scared, of that reason for sure.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's pretty interesting. So on the back to, I guess I want to circle back to people. And this is interesting. So I think one of the stories that I got to chat with a mutual or a friend of yours on some research was a story. And this is, so just to kind of circle back to what you said earlier, was having a hard time owning your own voice, right? And believing in yourself in that. And part of that's your natural wiring. I think there's this theme line we see with like not being as competitive, harder to embrace who you are and the voice that you have and the impact you can have. But one of the things you've demonstrated in your life, just from the research I've done, is that you're able to champion and own other people's voice extremely well. And one of the examples of that is a good friend of yours that you called and said, hey, can you make it to some event? Is in Denver, I believe. So give me the context of this story and what happened, because you basically had your friend, the context I know is that you had your friend come speak in an event and told her about it 3 hours before it happened and got her to actually follow through with it.
Yeah.
So walk me through that story, because I think this is just a great illustration of your ability to champion others.
Yeah, I think I hope the integrity and trust I have with people is just like, hey, trust me. Like, I'm not going to ask you to do something, because I don't ask for a lot of help. I don't ask for a lot of things. I just do. So when I think there's like a relationship I have with people where I'm just like, yo, you need to meet this person, and that's it, period. And people trust me on that. So yeah, I think there's just, I rally behind people, because I feel like I've worked with thousands and thousands of high school, college students and just people and myself. But, I feel like I could see people for their story before it's even begun, like before it even started, because of, I don't know what it is, but yeah, I guess I can get behind and champion people and see them like, I guess like their parents might see them, or I'm going to see my kids, or maybe how God sees them, with those kind of eyes where you're like, God looks at his kids, I feel like, just with complete awe of just like beauty. And literally every single one of us has like such beauty to different aspects of our life. And if you can look at people like God looks at people and have those eyes, look at their souls, like I said, I think there's something magical that happens within ourselves to really be like, a champion. Like what I always call is like, in our society, there's a lot of devil's advocates that can always tell you what's going to go wrong with your idea. And I like to think of it as creating a culture of angels advocates. and just encouraging the hell out of people. And so there's like more, it's like opposite, right? And so, I guess that would be it.
No, it's really cool. I mean, everyone just, and that's something that I've seen even, like everyone has talked about your ability to connect, your ability to empower others. And it's a common theme throughout your life and the impact you've had, which is really amazing. So I also, that's like one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things to do as well. So a little Instagram live, ciao. You gotta get it in while you're recording,
Yeah.
All the people that can't see us, thanks for coming out. But, video podcast. No, I'm just kidding. So one of the things that you have done along the way is storytelling and filming. Mm-hmm. So I want to just touch on that a little bit. What made you fall in love with video and film, and I guess what was the process of learning those skills and those creative outlets like?
So I grew up sports, basically. Never did anything creative. I mean, like I mentioned, I danced a little bit, but never picked up a camera or a pen to be an artist or anything. And so I just didn't know it existed. And picked up a camera when I was like 21 and just fell in love with something about it. Because I would see a video on YouTube and it would make me feel something. And either if I cried or if I felt inspired, if I felt something, I was like, dang, something just gave me an emotion. And I love creating emotion. And so I got a camera to take pictures, kind of like literally I traveled for a year and a half without a camera. And I was like, I should probably take pictures of this stuff and send to my mom. So I got a camera and I realized it had a video setting on it. And I was like, oh, cool, I should take video clips. Started taking little video clips, saw my computer had like a free editing software to it. Would just make fun stuff at first, like really, and it would be pictures and videos and mixed with it. And I'd have a song to it. And then started getting a little bit more serious about it on some level. Still very basic videos, but I would be able to make people cry because the semester that the students would be traveling the world, I would kind of create like a little montage and it'd be really sad. And people would crying, and I'd be like, this is dope. I can make people cry. I was like, this is sick. I can literally like, that's dope. That I can, someone can cry after the video is done. So I did that, and then I was like, I wonder if I can make them inspired because that's like a little bit cool over an emotion. So it was a slow journey and slow process, and never really knew what I was doing ever. Like never knew what frame rate was or f-stop or shutter speed, or I still don't know most of that stuff, but I never really knew what I was doing, but I knew the basics and just slowly taught myself. And then I was also, I think another big piece was I was traveling, meeting nonprofits, and I would hear their stories and I would be like, oh my God, that changed my heart. That changed my brain chemistry. It changes the way I think. It inspires me. It makes me more hopeful. I was like, dang, I wish everyone I knew could be in this meeting with me, listening to this nonprofit story. So I started using that. That was a big turning point where I was like, okay, if this is making me more hopeful and more excited and more inspired, then I should maybe hopefully transcend what I'm learning through a camera, because not everyone can travel to the Philippines with me, So that was a big piece. And then, moved back to Denver, and I was just like, I had this camera and I would just show up to nonprofits and like little nonprofit events and go, hey, I have this camera. I can kind of make videos. Can I make you guys a video for free? And I would just literally do that for free all the time. And then one day someone gave me $100 and I kind of freaked out and was like, holy crap, I just like scammed someone because they paid me $100 to make a video and I have no idea what I'm doing. And and then next thing you know it, doing, what I love for free, someone's like, yo, you want to come travel with it and come to Africa? And I was like, sure, did that. And then it was just God just kind of opened up the storm.
Yeah. Do you see that as being something, a part of your life always? Is that like a passion of yours? Or is it more something that you've done just because God's put it there?
It was a passion for sure. I mean, literally, like, a passion is like, what makes time stop, what makes you come alive, what makes you excited. I love video and film and telling stories. I'm definitely taking a break from it. What sometimes people do and what I did, and it's not always bad, but you mix your passion with work. So you get burnt out a little bit, which is just, it's like a dangerous territory. And so I definitely mixed passion with like my income. And even though I was loving what I was doing on some level, it just became kind of tainted because I wouldn't be able to create fun things that I wanted to create. So I'm kind of recovering. I'm a recovering passion addict. But I think someday down the road.
Yeah. So that's interesting because one of the questions that a friend was thinking would be good to ask is, what makes you come alive? And now, since it's not that as much, what would you say in this season of life makes you come alive?
Man, what makes me come alive? Well, that's where I talk about purpose a lot, and purpose and passions I feel like are different things. A lot of people say, make your passion your purpose the same thing, which is possible, but I think passion and purpose are two different things. Like I know people who love acting, but then also love mental health, helping young people with mental health, and I'm like, oh, there's your purpose and there's your passion, so there's different things, and then sometimes it does bleed together. Like for me, actually really well for me, my passion was video, and I was literally making videos changing the world. I was helping nonprofits tell stories, and it was a purpose. But for me, what makes me come alive is, walking through life with people and just hearing, literally, watching someone take their mask off and be vulnerable and find strength in it and find freedom in it. There's no other feeling like it in the world. And so I'm trying to hopefully figure out how that could ever sustain me and provide for me, which is a dream. But yeah, my hope and what makes me come alive is just sitting with, I love high school kids more than anything in the world, but I could sit with any age and talk with them. But yeah, I love high school kids, and they're really alone and scared and broken, and I love sitting with them.
Yeah, what in what you just said with helping people take their mask off, what have you found is most effective in helping others do that? In a relationship context, like what are some ways that really helps people remove that mask and be who they actually are?
Well, you got to do it. So you got to do it. You got to lead. You got to lead by example, and you really have to own your vulnerability and I think be real. Like I always come back to being real, and I know I'm goofy and funny in front of high school kids and in my life in general, but I think when you stop trying so hard and you stop really caring what people think, and you can just find like your playful self and who you are, it gives kids like that safety that you're not trying to be impressive or impress them, but you're just trying to kind of be there with them. But yeah, I would say you have to definitely learn how to own your own and just be you.
Yeah. And it even goes to what you're talking about with seeing people how God sees us.
Totally.
That not only allows us to love people better, but it also allows us to not live in fear as much either, because so much of a fear is just the fear of man and elevating man above its rightful place, which is even and equal with the rest of humanity.
Totally.
And fear is saying, okay, this person is above humanity, thus I care more about what they think or how they view me than everyone else because they're elevated now.
Yeah.
And that's not how God sees us either. So
totally.
it's like that applies in so many ways. One of the things you also touched on before we come back to storytelling is seeing how this, like, marrying what you feel called to in your purpose with something that's sustainable in life, right? And this was one of the other questions that someone had wanted to hear from you on is, how do you marry reality with being a dreamer? Or when have you been most met with reality, even as someone who is more of a dreamer or a nomad or that more of that stereotype, which I don't like stereotypes, but more drawn to that personality. What is that like in trying to figure out the tension between that wanderlust and also the sustainability and providing?
What gives me peace and freedom is seasons. There's seasons of our life, and if we have to side hustle for a season and work and grind and strap down for a season, then live in that season and do that and make the best of it. But yeah, remain humble and remain, realistic of just like, there's a world that functions. And, but yeah, I think seasons gives me a lot of peace and freedom. So when I wasn't traveling and I was yearning to travel, I would just be like, this is a season of rest. This is a season of not traveling, and be okay with that, because there is beauty in it all. Like where my seasons of travel were amazing, but I was also sometimes, couldn't wait to rest. So it's just like, I think living, for me, I always try to preach just living meekly, not meek, but like living humbly.
Yeah.
Where you don't need much. You got to live minimalist. Obviously Tim Ferriss has a book called The 4 Hour Work Week, and figure out simplicity. Our cultural standard says we should own 4 pairs of shoes, and says we should own a whole bunch of clothes, and says we should, own the newest phone. All these different things, created by culture and society. We can strip away layers like onions and be really more aware and intentional and aware of what. Yeah. So.
Oh, it's so huge. Yeah, and you don't know what you really can live without until you do, and it's a slow process. So we don't start off by thinking, I need all these things. No, it's like, oh, I need this one thing. And then I need one more thing. And over time, we just accumulate so much that we start thinking we need everything, and we don't.
Yeah.
And those seasons, you made a good point. Seasons are so helpful. I mean, that's a whole chapter in my book is on momentum. And man, life is filled. I think there's a great quote by, I can't remember the guy, but he said that change and consistency are the 2 balancing weights of humanity on the seesaw of humanity that God has us on. And he's patterned the world with rhythm to enable us to thrive in them both. And life is full of rhythm, right? And it has these ebbs and flows, these different seasons, even like the new year that we're in now, is such a helpful annual tradition of, hey, let's have a new calendar year to give us a fresh start.
Yeah.
Just as much like a Sunday is a fresh start to a new week. I mean, these rhythms are so helpful for us to, like in golf, it was, there's the front 9 and the back 9. You have a new 9, and there's something psychological that you experience in that is such a gift, such a blessing. Even sleeping, having a night and then a morning, and you get new start, and the truths like God's mercies are new every morning, and these things that are just so encouraging, that are daily resets. So
yeah,
it's a good word. I appreciate you bringing that up. So I want to wrap up the storytelling piece by I want to hear as someone who's told stories for a while, and that's been part of your craft, what makes a good story?
Yeah. What makes a good story is simplicity, and I think just like trying to not overthink it, and really kind of like just, I don't know. I think there's there's so many different directions I guess you can go with that, but I don't know. For me, I would always when I'm telling stories through video or film, we're saturated with a million videos on YouTube and content where I'm always just like, yo, don't try to be too abstract with it. Some people can, but for me, I'm like, be simple with it. Like walk through it with a simple mindset, a simple, spoon feed. Like try to explain your nonprofit or your story or something like that you're telling a 5-year-old kid. Because we just, in our culture, we're very saturated with a lot of stuff, but, I think, something like that.
That's what mastery is, right? Simplicity on the far side of complexity. And it's such a beautiful thing, but so hard. And I mean, Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. And it's just it's a beautiful, we understand that more intuitively and less intellectually because it's hard to do. Who do you look up to, or who do you aspire towards, or who are you inspired by when it comes to any type of storytelling or filming or any of those channels?
I would say my biggest inspiration is probably a lot of people's biggest inspiration, but I would say Bob Goff wrote Love Does. And it's funny, years ago I was in Uganda at his place, his nonprofit, and he was there, and I had no idea who he was. And this was probably 5 years ago. And I've seen his book. I think a friend had his book, and there was 20 copies there, so I actually stole one. I took one, didn't ask, and sorry, Bob.
Confessions.
But he was there. I didn't meet him. He was there, but I didn't really meet him because I didn't really know who he was. Took the book, and I read that, and for me, it's a lot of people can write a lot of books and speak on stages and inspire a lot of people, but when you live it out, Tom Shadyac is a director. He's one of my heroes. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but and then my mentor Tommy Spalding, he's another one where when you live out a humble, simple life, that I think it speaks 10 times more volumes. And if you want $1 million house, get $1 million house. But when you live simple and when you live more like action and love, like Love Does, his book is Love Does. It moves. It creates. When you live that life, I feel like I'm inspired because I know a lot of people who write amazing books and speak on stages, but when they live different than how they preach, maybe kind of like that, then I'm not really impressed. Character, right? So character is what you do when no one's watching.
Yeah.
and I think people with character, because even like, so I named celebrities, right? I named famous people, but like I said, a janitor at a skyscraper can be more loving and more genuine, more authentic, more joyful than the CEO that's at the top of the building. And I'm just like, dang, like what, I would rather have dinner with that janitor than that CEO. That CEO might have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and logic, maybe. But I want to learn love. I don't want to learn anything more stuff. Like people know Einstein. There's been billions of smart people throughout the years, and being smart's dope. But I want to be a really good lover.
Yeah, and the beauty is God calls people different things, and they're all needed and useful. But man, no matter what He's called you to, we can all love. And He's always called us all to love. That's a universal calling.
Yeah, you don't need a college degree. Yeah,
no, and I think the other thing that's so beautiful is the things like the spiritual maturity that we put so much weight on within Christianity is it has no relevance to our ability for faith, love, or obedience.
Yeah.
The three things that God calls us to most. We think that they're all, spiritual maturity is of the utmost importance, and no, it's not. Actually, faith, love, and obedience are, and spiritual maturity is a byproduct of doing those things as we grow in that.
Yeah.
It's not, again, it's like the means to the end versus the process of it, and man, it's such a thing we need to be reminded of so often. And I think part of that just goes back to the whole ego side, and we love just patting ourselves on the back as much as possible.
Yeah, I think we like confusing that, right? Because Jesus was like, I give you a new commandment. So there's technically 11 commandments, and he's like, I give you a new one. He's like, go love everyone like I loved you. And then when you pick apart how Jesus loved people, my favorite two qualities about him is what he's best at is listening and asking questions. And when you can get really good at listening and asking questions, you become a lot less judgmental, a lot less ego driven, and you become just a better lover. And love is listening, right? Love is very like counterintuitive to that, it's just being there with people. And yeah, Jesus was good at that.
He was the best at it. And always will be. Yeah. Praise God for that. So I want to let's get to purpose here. So purpose is a big theme for you right now in life, and will be, I'm sure. You're wearing a shirt that says it. We're in a studio that has it on the wall.
I just got these yesterday.
Yes.
I don't know if I like them, but I ordered 50, so I should figure out, hopefully, if people like them.
Yeah. So when did your focus or your mind and vision kind of wrap around this word and this identity, and what is the trajectory of it for your life and what you're focused on doing right now?
So I don't know if there was an epiphany moment. I remember the moment where Perry and I were talking. One of my best friends is Perry, and we said pursuing purpose together, and we started talking about a documentary and what a documentary would look like, and we started talking about purpose a lot because of the hero's journey as like a theme. This guy named Joseph Campbell created this whole formula called the hero's journey about every human's on this thing called the hero's journey. It's separation from self and rebirth and finding mentors, all this stuff, and you come full circle. But somewhere along the lines, we're talking about, success and happiness is everything. I feel like a lot of people are talking about how to be successful, how to be happy, all these things. And for me, even passion for a long time, I was like, passionate people, find your passion, all this stuff. And I'd preach passion. But even passion has its burnout, or even like its confusion in it. And it's still kind of self-focused.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way I talk about high school, when I talk to high school kids, is when I was in high school, I walked around with a mirror facing me. And I can always am I late to class? How do I look today? Who am I eating lunch with? It was always about me. And when I turned that mirror into a window and I was looking at more people, more than myself, I remember thinking to myself, like, whoa, like life seems a little bit more colorful and real than when there's a window instead of a mirror. And yeah, anyway, I guess coming to purpose, I guess my own testimony, my own personal, I found my freedom in who I am and separation from my identity. I found my confidence in something when I helped people bigger than my helping myself. To where I could help, I could get money, I could get fame, I could get accolades, I can get attention for being cool. But I was like, wow, that empties my cup pretty quick. I was like, but when I have purpose, like I'm mentoring these inner city kids, and I'm not like the savior of anybody by any means, but I'm just loving them where they're at, and they're finding that love in me. They're like, hey, BC, I need help with school or with a girlfriend or with struggles. It becomes more intimate. And I personally found my confidence and my separation from ego and my freedom in something bigger than myself. purpose, I guess that's kind of where it's at, is like, I want people to experience purpose. I want people to experience helping something that's bigger than them. And love, is loving is like doing without asking anything in return, right? Like our world is so transactional, and everything's transaction, right? You help me, I'm gonna help you. You do this, I'm gonna pay you. And I think love is transformational. And so turning that transaction and transformation to where it's like, I'm gonna love radically because I'm not going to ask for anything in return. It's all transformation, right? And so, yeah, I want people to experience helping others and doing something bigger than themselves, because it gets a lot less pressure.
Transactional versus transformational, it's huge. That's an amazing distinction. What do you see as the unique challenges of today's society for that? Like, considering modern times and the world we live in now, what are the things characteristic of our time that's helping or hurting that for people?
Well, everything's biology, right? Everything's biology based. And so as humans, it's survival. And survival and science and what we can prove, what we can see, makes us feel safe, makes us feel confident, because we're like, this is what it is. This, love doesn't exist because you can't see it. It's like, well, ever been in love? Yeah. Well, how do you know, right? It's like, well, you can't measure love in science, but love isn't logical. And so we have to learn how to embrace the illogicalness of, like, we gotta be okay with submitting to not knowing what we don't know. And we already don't know a lot. We know some things about space or some things about humans, but we don't know a lot about, certain parts of the brain. We don't know a lot about certain parts of space. And we have to, like, kind of submit to being okay with that. And like I said, opposite of faith is sight. But we function best with sight. And the biology of us is like, we need to feel it, we need to see it, we need to eat it and taste it. But love isn't like that. And so how do we flip culture on its head and do everything counterintuitive to what is safe and secure? So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because today's society is the age of information, right? The dissemination of information everywhere. There's more information, more available than ever before to everyone. And what that produces is less faith, more knowledge, right? Yeah, sure, I can figure that out. I can just Google it, right? And I can just, why do I need to learn base principles? Because I can just Google everything. And why do I have to have faith when everything's already discovered already, right? Which isn't true. But in the earlier phase, that's how we approach it. I think that the downside of an age of information is that we forget that we're wired for faith.
Yeah.
And God wants us to submit and know that we aren't God. That's like the number one thing. Understand that you're not God, that there's something greater than you. And that because of that, we get to incorporate faith into what we can't see. And that is actually more of a blessed and fulfilled state than trying to figure it all out, right? I mean, you talk to a lot of, it's just interesting how when you look at all the people who are on the pioneer of science and frontier of science and doing great work, but very rarely are they the most happy or fulfilled people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because, and there's a great book, there's one called Strangers to Ourselves. It's all about the adaptive unconscious and understanding the unconscious mind, which is really fascinating. But he brings a point that, look, once you dive into this, you start understanding that 95% plus of your actions and decisions are uncontrolled. They're out of your subconscious, and we put conscious descriptions of why we did it to it, but really we aren't in control of why we're doing that.
Yeah.
And if you dive too deep into understanding that, it leads you to depression, and you feel helpless.
Yeah.
And so that's not helpful. And you look at even in the Bible, right? Solomon, was it helpful? Well, I mean, he did amazing things, but what did it do? It led him away from God. It led him to too much pride, and he became a god, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting. There's this tension there of information and knowledge that can hurt, like you're talking about, hurt our ability to love others and our ability to have purpose and to champion others in that. So it's really interesting. But that turning a mirror into a window, that's an awesome mantra or motto. What would you say? Do you have a motto now, or what's the thing that you tell yourself the most? What do you preach to yourself the most?
Dang, I don't know. There's one quote in a song that hit me. It's by Johnny Swim, if you know Johnny Swim.
Yeah.
And this song says, till the loneliest feel known. And I get wrapped up in thinking there's people out there that don't feel seen or heard or loved or feel like they belong, because I've been there. And so I long for just like meeting people where they're at and just finding those people and they've just maybe never been hugged tight and just spoken into and breathed life into. And so I can't do that to everyone. So my goal is to create leaders that can. And so I don't know how to, I don't know how to touch everyone like that, but I know I can create leaders and teach people how to love people like that. And so it's not about me just loving people, but it's me about finding people who I can invest in and be like, whoa, you have potential to be an amazing lover. I'm going to invest in you. And, so I guess it keeps me going, man. Till the loneliness feel known is like a mantra for my mind for sure.
That's super cool. What, I know one of the things, like when you were 23, like you'd mentioned, the question was, what's the biggest need in the world? And that's such a great question, but how would you answer that now, 10 years, not 10 years, but 7 or 8 years later? What would you say is the biggest need in the world as you see it?
The biggest need in the world is the internal journey to go within and to really ask the hard questions. Because we're searching a lot around, obviously information, Google and traveling, but to be still and to go, I think take what I always say is, and I think it's a quote, but it's basically the greatest distance a man will travel is 18 inches, from his head to his heart. And to connect your heart to your head. So there's a lot of smart people out there. There's a lot of people who have brilliant ideas, who are really, really smart and that love business and love marketing and just love, that. And there's a lot of lovers. There's a lot of people who start nonprofits. There's a lot of people who have a great compassion. And each one of those, they have to go the distance. They have to connect their compassion to their head. They need to figure out what is logical, what is how do I scale this? Like nonprofits are now turning into social entrepreneurships. Nonprofits are now taking on, instead of I need your money, it's like I'm going to create a business so you can buy something, So it's that evolution of, and now businesses are learning how to donate and give back to philanthropy, which might be, whatever, shady sometimes, but it's, for the most part, it's literally, I think most companies are like, hey, how do we actually have purpose? Because even millennials now are like, I want to be tied to a company that has a why and a purpose behind it and that is helping. And like Red Bull, for instance, I have friends who work at Red Bull, and Red Bull helps them, find volunteer work and go do beach cleanups and help the homeless. Like companies are now like, I want our employees to be compassionate. So yeah, I think it's, not just compassion. I want people to be compassionate. I want to turn, America is, our worst drug in America is apathy. And for me, I want to turn apathy to empathy, right? And so empathy is, feeling pain of other people. And right now we're in a very apathetic country to where we are like, even when it comes down to the wall, right? Build the border because we're trying to get people out instead of, that's apathy, of not caring. But then the empathy is like, well, where do we connect the head and the heart, right? So people trying to build the wall our head space, and people who don't really want the wall, maybe this is a metaphor,
totally,
are more heart space. And it's like, how do you connect both? How do you know where those two align?
Totally.
And how do you find balance in them? So,
and that's all of life too, right? Every part and aspect of life and every circumstance or even position or stance, there's a spectrum between two polar opposite, diametrically opposed points. And there's a reason for that, because that's God's design, right? I mean, that's even true in the Bible. God's sovereignty and man's responsibility. Okay, they can't both be true, but they are. How do you marry those, right?
Yeah.
Just as much as like the left versus the right, the liberal versus the Republican, like the liberal versus conservative. I mean, how do you marry these two? Because both believe they're right and both have value and merit to them. And there's a great book, The Righteous Mind, I'm reading. This is why it's kind of all like on my. It's really fascinating. It shows a lot of why we're so divided over things like religion and politics and what's going on internally and how we're wired culturally and all that. It's been fascinating, but it's always that tension that we have to live in. And
totally. So when you connect your compassionate heart to your logical head, you just got to have those conversations with yourself. And you just got to, empathy is putting yourself in the other person's shoes, right? So it's like, oh, okay, they want guns to be legal because they want to protect their family. I want guns to be legal because I want to protect my family. It's the exact same formula, right? And so, just being able to meet people where they're at for sure, and empathy.
I want to hear, before we move to the end here, the one-offs, I want to hear about the lows, because there's a lot of lows in life, as we all know. And they're less visible, they're less heard, they're less known. But I'd love to hear, in those 10 years, in the last 10, 11 years, what would you consider one of the lowest or darkest moments? And would love just for you to take us there and kind of talk about that experience.
Yeah, lows. Yeah. Yeah, if I'm going through lows, people know about it, because I feel like even on my Instagram or an hour ago, I was posting that I'm in one of the tough seasons of my life. But yeah, lows are, man, they're really intimate, right? Like they're really kind of like define our character on, like, it's easy to be at the top or be successful or have affirmation. But what defines our character is kind of when the lights are off and when we're by ourselves and we're hopeless, or depressed or anxiety. What do we do then? And that kind of defines our character. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of low seasons. Losing my dad was a big one. I lost, he lost a battle with cancer. Lost him really quick without even a notice. Actually just happened.
Wow.
So that was tough. And then at that exact same time, I lost my community house. I used to have a community house with 8 guys, and we used to run community groups there, and lost that house. And so I lived out of my car. So I didn't even want to I kind of was just I was still mentoring my kids, my students, but I just started living out of my car and was just all right, man, I kind of just, I'm going to wait on you, God. I'm kind of at the end of my rope, but let's see what I can do. I didn't stop doing, I think I was still doing videos for nonprofits, still mentoring my students, but I was definitely I'm going to abandon any sort of, connection to to things, I think, because I was afraid maybe of pain or emotion, but yeah, they still come and go. I mean, I would say I've reached maximum success in my life in the sense of I've literally, helped someone change their life and on a scale, and that's just, I'm just trying to be egotistical or brag about myself, but I've, seen it and done it. And I still struggle with anxiety and depression because we live in a world that is trying to make us anxiety, depression driven. It monetizes off of it, right? Benefits from it. So yeah, it's a tug of war and battle. And I always come back to purpose. I think when I was in my lows, when I was, living out of my car, I lost my dad and my, the most important person in my life, I had purpose, and I had my foundation in knowing that my life was bigger than myself. Because if it was just myself, then I would feel like I, would have went much darker. But I want people to experience purpose and have the relationship with purpose, because it keeps you going in your lows. It reminds you of your why, of why you're needed here, why you're important, why you belong. And so, yeah, I think your lows is a really intimate walk with God. I always, when I meditate, sometimes I'm picturing myself walk through a field when I die, and I walk up to Jesus in this beautiful gold field, and we kind of look at each other and we just start laughing because it's been a tough 10 years, really lonely, really isolating. I'm coming out of the valley now where I have the most amazing friends and community, and I guess you can say success, not financially yet, but success, and I've done a lot. But it's been really tough. It's been really lonely and very beautiful, but also it's it's supposed to be tough. And so, yeah.
That is it. It's meant to be hard.
Yeah.
It's meant to be hard, guys. We need to hear that. Life is meant to be hard. And that's the experience we all face. And we so often think that life is meant to be easy, but safety, security, and comfort, man, that never produces the people that God wants us to be. We need to be refined through the trial. What is it? What was that experience like? I obviously can't relate, but how did you walk through that season of losing your dad, and what did God teach you through that time? And I guess how did you cope? Because I can't imagine, I really can't, I'm curious, because it's even almost a selfish question of I want to because that's going to happen to all of us.
Oh, wow. I don't know. I have no idea. There wasn't like a routine I did or a formula. It was just getting day by day, getting through the days, trying to understand it at some point, but then also just being like, I guess like what the piece I had about it for sure a little bit was faith in God, because I was like, God was like, I don't know, I was like, God, we're here to get to know God on earth. When we're on earth, we're here to get to know God and let other people know God, right? And let other people know that they're loved by God. And my dad did that really well. He was really good at that. And so I had this piece when he passed that he was successful, and because he loved people really, really well, he let them know they were loved by God. And he was just like a good guy, and he was good. And I remember just being like, dang, like I can't, it's it, it's time. And so I don't know. I guess that gave me a little bit of peace knowing he came here and was successful. What our mission is.
And what age were you when he passed?
I was 25, 26. Yeah.
It's been about 5 years now.
Yeah.
What would he say to you today in the last 5 years?
Damn. Well, he was always my biggest supporter, no matter what I was doing. I could be selling books and he'd be, amping me up. Oh man, I mean, he was always so proud of me anyway, so I feel like he would definitely just be more proud. He'd probably be pretty stoked on where I've come because he knew where I came from. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would love to have that conversation with him, obviously, and he was just a goofy, funny character. Yeah, I think he'd be stoked on like the man I gotta become, because he always, I think, like I said, he always saw it in me when I didn't see it in me. And maybe that's where I get it from. But yeah, he would like, be my biggest fan when I wasn't that cool. And I think that's maybe why I do it to everyone else. But yeah, it's crazy.
That's an amazing legacy.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
No, thank you, bro.
So what would you, so knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 20-year-old self 10 years ago? What advice would you give them? Or him then?
Yeah, I mean, I hustled really hard. Definitely to be more graceful and loving and more authentic, and remove your mask. Stop trying so hard. For a long time I was trying really hard, and whatever that looks like. When we put on our facade, the way we dress, and yeah, we want to look good maybe, but also sometimes we're just trying too hard. We're trying too hard to impress people when we should really be we're trying too hard to impress people when we should be trying to impress them with like how kind and loving we are. And I kind of remember just through those seasons of, I was kind, but I don't know if I was like really loving to difficult people maybe, or going above and beyond to like love people or make them feel loved. I was in safety mode. I was still trying to protect myself. I was very transactional. So yeah, I think I would tell myself like, dude, chill, bro. Like, I'd be like, dude, stop trying so hard, man. Like, just be you, dude, and like be authentic and real, and you're gonna feel freer doing that, man, because you're gonna get really drained and heavy trying to be something you're not.
Yeah. What about if you had to project when you're 40, 10 years from now, what would the thing that you'd tell yourself now be?
If I was 40?
Yeah, if you're 40 looking back at yourself now, what would that advice be if you had to project it?
Do it, bro. Do it. Like, dude, you're waiting because you're scared, but do it. I mean, I'm kind of doing that right now in my life where I'm telling myself, I've always kind of been like a little bit older than myself and just been able to like speak, but yeah, if I'm telling my 40-year-old self, my 30-year-old self something, it's like, dude, do it now. Do not wait another second. Own it. Own your story. Own your God gifts. Own, your breath, man, and stop feeling small, stop feeling insecure. Obviously it's a humbling way to go because you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. God's doing everything in my life, but I think God's trying to speak to me. My older self's trying to speak to me of like, dude, you're worthy. You're worthy of abundance, bro.
I love it.
Yeah.
Dude, this has been amazing. We'll end with a few one-offs here and call it a day, and maybe do a round two down the road. We'll see.
Yeah.
But
we've been here 2 hours?
No, hour and a half.
Okay,
yeah.
No,
This is like,
up.
We gotta go deep, bro.
No, we did.
So what? If you could teach a class for one semester, what would you teach on and why?
it'd probably be, heart-led leadership. I would say vulnerability. Like, leadership is not being strong, it's being vulnerable. It's being servant. It's being last. It's really putting yourself last in line.
And what age would you like to teach that in?
Probably high school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When are you most yourself?
When I'm with my friends.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, man. I feel like the most successful person in the world when I'm with my friends, because we're just goofy laughing all the time and we just don't care what we think about each other. So, yeah.
I love it.
It took me a long time, but I finally found it.
Yeah. That's a sweet place to be.
Yeah.
This is a tough question, but what do you believe to be true that you wish everyone else believed to be true?
That we're sent here with a mission, that we're purpose, that we're sent, we have a reason why we're here, not to just, eat and go to sleep and poop.
What's your guilty pleasure? How about that?
My guilty pleasure is donuts, sweets, sour candies, bad, man.
Wow.
And,
What's that donut that keeps you up at night?
The blueberry vegan donut at Whole Foods. Yeah, dude, it haunts me. I don't even go to Whole Foods anymore. I go to Ralph's. Yeah.
I feel you. What would you say are your cornerstone habits, if any?
Working out, exercise is a big one for me. I love exercising. It gets my mind a little bit more clear, gets my body healthy and confident, and and then, man, my relationship with God's always been really different, where it's like, I remember being in high school when I kind of first heard about God, and I'd be driving in my car and I'd pretend that he was just sitting in my passenger seat and I'd be talking to him like he's a friend of mine. And that's kind of how I talk to him now. And same thing, I'm like, dang, God, like what, it's just like a buddy, you know? And so, I would say that, like, it's humor, it's confusing, we get in fights, and it's just like a friend. And I would say that's like me at my core, because I'm just a loner at the end of the day. Like, I'm just very solo. So I feel like that's always kind of kept me. Yeah.
That's cool. My grandpa's the same way. He calls the Holy Spirit his teammate and partner, and talks. It's just, I love it. That's a sweet way. Okay, 2 more and we're done. What books have had the biggest impact on you personally?
Love Does, for sure. The Alchemist. I read that and I thought it was wrote for me when I was reading it. Oh, dang. What are some other good ones? I got to think what else I've been reading lately. I read, let's see, what else? Love Does. One of my mentors is Heart-Led Leader. He wrote that one, and I remember just like learning more about what leadership is with love and kindness and vulnerability.
What about on the movie or film side?
A documentary called I Am changed my life. Tom Shadyac made that one, and it's called I Am, and I watched that and I was like, oh my God, I want to tell stories, do film that means something. So that one, Finding Joe, is another really amazing documentary that's about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. Yeah.
That's good. Last question, and this is something we ask all the guests. If you could send a morning text reminder to every up-and-comer, what would you say and why? Every morning they get this text message from you as a reminder. What would it say?
Probably something like, you're a badass, and I hope you're loved and you're already successful because you're alive, and you're you, and don't put a mask on today.
Yeah, don't put a mask on today. That's good. That's good, man. Yeah, dude, this has been awesome, BC. Where can people find you? Tune in to hear you.
You can find me at Whole Foods at the donut section, y'all.
If you want to get to BC's heart, you know what to buy him.
Yeah, BC Cerna. BC, just literally the 2 initials, and then SERNA, BC Cerna, on all platforms. You can find me on stuff. Instagram's a great place to start. Pursuing Purpose Podcast is what the podcast is called, if I can plug my own podcast.
Yes.
It's still new. It's up and coming. That's why I'm on the show. But if you go give it a listen, I'd appreciate it. Love it. Thank you.
Holler. And you guys can find the full show notes for everything at theupandcomershow.com/episodes/BC, as in before Christ. No, Brandon Charles.
Yeah.
And bro, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on and just encouraging people. I think people will really feel encouraged, challenged, and loved just by what you shared. So thanks so much.
Amen. Thanks, bro.
And for all you listening, we hope you have an up and coming week.